prepare for this. So if you notice in the book, it has a checklist for the children, has a checklist for the wife, and a checklist for the husband. And the things it asks is, how would you feel if you saw your wife with another man? How would you feel if you saw your husband with another woman? And the children are asked, how would you feel if you only had one parent to take you to the activities? And, one of them is like, I'd cry. One of them is, I don't care. And one of them is like, I'd be angry. So just so that you can get kind of a reading on your emotional, responses to this and deal with it beforehand, instead of, it's so silly. Kids are so much smarter and so much emotionally more mature than we were when we were kids. It was all Disneyland and all this stuff, and they know the ways of the world. They see so much on TV. They see so much that they talk about with their friends at school, and rather than just lay it on them all of a sudden, they can hear the fights. They can feel the coldness or the heat or the anger. So unless it is abuse is a whole nother ballgame. That's like a whole nother topic. But let's say it's just animosity. There's no battering going on, anything like that. Sit down and say, look, let's go over these checklists and see how everybody feels about this, how we're going to deal with this, and get used to the idea.
Okay. That's great. You also talked about 4 different types of divorce. Could you talk about the most common type? I know sometimes it's really easy and sometimes it's just inextricably you're intertwined like the War of the Roses. But what's the
Right.
most common situation?
I'd say I have 4 levels, and if I could I'll super briefly go over. The very easiest one is obviously when you're younger, you don't have any big items that you've bought. You don't own, aren't contracts with cars or houses or other items. You don't have kids yet. You don't work at the same place, and neither of you is fighting over about leaving. You both just say, "Oh golly, this was just a mistake. We can remain friends, but let's just split up." Okay, that's the easiest one. Now, every one of those items that gets turned around and goes the other way makes it harder. So the most common is that the people do own something together. They do have children, but let's say to make it fairly easy, they're not working at the same place or own a company, because that's just a whole nother level of involvement and frustration, and they're not fighting. So that is usually where most people fall into it, that they have children, they have some things that they've signed on together with, and they're not working at the exact same place, and that's fairly a less complicated divorce. And by the way, lawyers only have to be brought into the divorce process if you two cannot agree on things. If you two can sit down like reasonable people, not fight over every penny and every stick of furniture, realize that you have to compromise on child custody issues and both share, your children's time in a positive manner and not break the other parent down in front of them because they love both of you. That
Right.
is the best kind of divorce to try and arrange.
Right. I'm surprised that you say that the most common is that people aren't fighting. I'm actually pleasantly surprised to hear that. Maybe by the time they get to that point, they've run out of energy around the subject, and it's basically the best approach for both at the time. But I just run into people all the time where it's especially difficult, usually involving passing the children back and forth. That's one of the most
Exactly.
difficult pieces of it, and it's the most visible to the kids. So we would just work to explore how the interactions between non-compatible parents
Right.
are in front of the children, if they could at least be civil and at least live up to their responsibilities in terms of getting the kids proper role models. And that's what I think is really what the goal is that even though you're showing them that our relationship didn't work, you're showing them a model of a peaceful dissolution of a
Exactly.
relationship. And so I think the tools that you're passing along to your children are very valuable.
Well, I think that it all depends on the adults. are they still infantile mentally? In that case, their hate for the other person overshadows the love for the children. And in that case, that's when the true fighting begins. And this is what makes me, very upset, is when people use their children against each other to try and turn them against their father or against their mother, or, one has more money access and they try and, spoil the children so that when they go back to mom, they don't feel like she loves them as much because she can't give them as much, because she's generally not earning as much and splitting it between more people. So I think the question is, do you love your children more than you hate your soon ex-spouse to be? And that's really the core of the best type of divorces, is where, when I say not fighting, I mean physically not abusive, and also mentally not wanting to hurt the other person, to just say,